Oh, great. I can speak now. Great. Hello, everyone. Thank you for gathering in very early morning because I'm not so good at working at the early morning. I'm very happy to moderate this session. The real-world application of the blockchain. So actually, this is my first time to moderate the session, so I'm a little bit nervous, but I will enjoy it. So now today, we know that a lot of blockchain platform players coming up. Ethereum is one of the famous one, but also IOTA and as any other kind of platform players coming up too. So it looks like the protocol layer of the blockchain is developing gradually well. So the probably next kind of a key things for this industry is mass adaptation of the blockchain technology to the world. So here we have the 5 panelists working on a consumer facing or B2B facing Bitcoin application player here. We call it dApps, distributed applications. So before starting the session, could you guys introduce yourself? Could you starting from Chris?
Sure. My name is Chris C. I am the founder of the Cardstack project and also the head of product. We are building the decentralized layer of the decentralized internet, which is basically building from the user experience downwards and figuring out how to make multiple blockchain applications come together to solve business problems so it's usable and scalable.
Okay. My name is Martin Lim. I'm the COO of Electrify. And what Electrify does is to put electricity retail and peer-to-peer energy trading across a citywide grid on the blockchain.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hope. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Eximchain. We're doing export-import on the blockchain. We're building the first public blockchain that supports privacy, security, and scalability for supply chain applications. We've been exploring this field from MIT since 2015, and we're currently building our proof of concept with a sourcing platform in China that has over 30,000 small and medium-sized business users.
Sorry. I'm Raphaël. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of Alice. We're a social impact network that's built on Ethereum. The goal of the network is to help identify and then scale really effective social and environmental projects. The first application that we put out last year that's in production already is a conditional donation platform. So we ran a pilot with a charity helping homeless people, helping them find accommodation and deal with mental health issues, for example. But when you give to a project on Alice, your money only gets paid out when the charity can prove that it's achieved its goals, meaning that it instills a lot of trust in donors.
Hey everyone, my name is Ryan Gittleson. I'm the co-founder of Virtue Poker. We're a peer-to-peer decentralized online poker platform built on Ethereum. We use a combination of an off-chain peer-to-peer card shuffling algorithm with on-chain smart contracts. And our goal is to build a safe and secure online poker platform for everyone to enjoy.
Great. Thank you so much, guys. So let's open to my first questions. So why do you think blockchain will practically fit to your products and business? And what pain points can you solve on your business by blockchain? Who wants to start first? Okay, great.
So in online poker, traditionally there's a deposit and withdrawal process. And what centralized online poker sites become are essentially central banks. All player deposits are held by these entities, and players have to trust that their funds are stored securely. So this is a really good use case for blockchain technology, specifically smart contracts on Ethereum, to remove that counterparty risk. So using a smart contract, you have a short-term escrow agent, and using a combination of this smart contract and a digital wallet owned by the user, players actually never have to deposit or withdraw money on our site, so they can play safe knowing that their money is always secure.
Very interesting.
So there are two uses of blockchain for what we're doing. The first one is just the sheer transparency that it gives. So recently, over the last few years, it seems like every year there's a new charity scandal, particularly in the UK or the US. And donors really want to know how their money is being used by charities, like what impact it's achieving, what goals it's achieving, and what our technology allows them to do is just have absolute certainty of what the charity that they've given to has achieved with the money. And all of that is verifiable on the blockchain, which is why it's really useful. But the other application of it is the crypto economics. So it's like applied game theory, really. So this mechanism, for example, where donors can hold their money in escrow or have the money held in escrow by a smart contract until the charity demonstrates that it's achieved its goals, is an incentive for charities to actually provide the data about their impact. And actually, we're not just a donation platform. Really, it's all about getting charities to share their data and incentivizing people to then take all of that data, crunch it, and surface the most effective projects. So when there'll be lots and lots and lots of social projects on the platform, it'll be very easy to identify which ones are the best, because there'll be incentives in place for people to analyze the data. And you couldn't really do that without the blockchain.
Can I ask an additional question for that? So, from the data, kind of data transparency perspective, how, the blockchain technology will help you guys and compare with the existing, database technology, like MySQL, such kind of things?
Right. Well, what happens today is that every single charity has data. If they're a good charity, they're measuring their impact, and they have data about what they've achieved. Or if they have funders, big trusts or foundations that have a big portfolio of charities that they've given to, or if they have impact investors who are investing in what they're doing and sort of systematically tracking the impact. All of those entities have visibility over what they're doing, but all that data is stored in local databases, so it's not really accessible to anybody. And also, the impact tends to be measured in very, very different ways. So you can't really compare. It's like comparing apples and oranges when you're trying to do that. All of what that means is that when you're trying to do research on a good charity, you end up spending a lot of money in due diligence if you can get access to the data at all. So by breaking out those silos and systematically incentivizing all these players to share the data, it just makes it much easier for people to access the absolute best.
No, got it. That's very cool. Right. Yeah, could you hope?
Yeah, sure. So there are so many challenging problems in global supply chain field.
Okay.
So every year, the stakeholders in global supply chain lost almost $5 trillion in potential revenue because of these
Really?
connections in the
Wow.
infrastructure. Yes, and it actually closely relates to everyone's life. When you order some goods
Totally
and
true.
you can't check the status, or you get different kind of goods in different time, so it actually impacts everyone's life. And the problem that we are focusing on right now is the credibility of the small and medium-sized enterprises, because those are the ones who normally have to go through very expensive agent to get funded or get their transaction record verified. Yeah, so every year there is about $1.5 billion trade financing gap. That is like an astonishing number. So we believe that public blockchain is the answer to that. So we have been relying on centralized agents, such as sourcing agents or banks for hundreds of years, and it is not working. And there are so many inefficiencies. In China alone, there are 40 million small and medium-sized businesses that are underserved in terms of their financing situation. And if you think about it, if you have a truly decentralized, trustless blockchain, that every business can put the proof of their business record on that blockchain, so that you don't have to only store your past transaction record with one buyer. Everyone else can go verify that record, and also banks or the potential lenders will have more confidence to give you the loan as well. So we believe that is the answer to solve the problems that we're having now. Everyone in the global supply chain field have to rely on the agents to tell them who to trust, whether they can have the credit or not, and even pass on the information what to do next. Yeah.
Got it. I didn't know that there is so much kind of cost correction there. That's great. No, that's huge business opportunity there. Great. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
So we're in the electricity business, electricity retail. So what we do on the blockchain really is we started doing it because we're looking for efficiencies within the system itself. When you pay for retail electricity, the cost to serve every account is anywhere from 5 to almost 30% on what you're paying on every bill. If we could save that amount of money, that brings down the cost of delivery of power to you as a user. And that's why we started first. When we started designing the platform we had, what we realized next was once we were able to move everything over to smart contracts, that also opens the ability to allow people to trade power. And instead of talking just about microgrids, we designed a system that worked on a citywide grid, which is why we're also in Japan as well. We're talking to a couple of the big conglomerates here to discuss executing that system for Japan also. So that's really interesting in a market like Japan because there was a lot of solar development in the last few years, but there was also a lot of feed-in tariffs from the government itself to incentivize this. Now these tariffs will end in 2019 and all taper off. So what happens then is you're going to have a lot of solar asset owners looking to increase their revenue. And what we will allow them to do is actually potentially look at them being able to sell that power directly over to consumers through the Synergy platform that we've got. And that's why we need the blockchain, because without the smart contracts, to execute all of these processes, it's far too expensive, far too difficult. Because energy trading has been occurring for the last few decades easily between utilities, but it's very, very expensive to do. But with smart contracts on the blockchain itself, we crash that cost down to something very, very simple, and we can actually democratize the whole process for everybody else.
Now, interesting. Thank you. Yeah. Please move to Chris. Yeah.
So when you talk about usability of blockchain-based solution, we right now are still in the phase where you will use one dApp, buy one token, use a bunch of plugins on your browser, and hope it works. And if you can make one transaction, congratulations, you're one of 1% of the people in the world who has ever done that. And that may be okay for the investment phase, the speculative phase of blockchain, but we really want that user experience to be as common as smartphones and iOS app. We have a long way to go. So I think we have an orientation towards building not just something that's just as good as the mobile apps of today, but to acknowledge the power of blockchains, especially smart contract-based blockchain, to allow multiple domains of your life to come together. They're all, let's say, on Ethereum and working together. They can be cross-chain compatible between blockchain. But the user experience today, the impression is still each team will build their own app, and hopefully you'll download it, or you go to a website, install a plugin, and good luck. So if we were to be able to unify the user experience through software development framework, plugins, and all these kind of technical terms, which is one aspect of it, we still have to solve the billing problem, which is how many tokens do you need to accept and approve to register a product into your crypto accounting system, which intersect with your own private database, which could be traditional, with some price feeds, with your assets on chain, smart contract keys. That gets pretty complicated as far as the actual billing model. So what we use is that we use a Ethereum-based smart contract to create essentially a prepaid card where you stake a certain amount of token, we call it Cardstack token, short for card, kind of like prepaid card. And then based on which application you end up needing to use at any given time, the provider, that could be a decentralized application or could be a cloud provider, would deduct from that pool using both on-chain and off-chain proofs to say, hey, I have offered this amount of service to this user. So please make a ledger of it, and later on, and we do it later on so that we can aggregate it up and also reduce the amount of on-chain transactions, we'll settle out, okay, $40,000 go to your platform, $30,000 go to your platform, and $100,000 was donation from the goodwill of the people. Awesome, right? And that means that we really want to use this smart contract so that one company is not in charge of saying, I am Google, I determine how much you get paid, how much you get paid, how much you get paid. Oh, I'm sorry, you get demonetized, right? That is a problem, right? And with smart contract, we can do it in a way that can be at the control of the community, and it's fair, it's transparent, it's based on data generated on-chain and off-chain. So there's a lot of potential to build something much bigger than an app store, something much bigger than an advertising network, something much better than a SaaS exchange like what Salesforce.com run within their platform to allow people to sell their wares, but only if you buy into the Salesforce business model and technology stack and programming languages. I believe we can have a cross-chain collaboration that still leads to this kind of cohesive experience, and blockchain can help us kind of bridge from the metering billing aspects of it, which I think is crucial.
Right, interesting. So, from the kind of a network congestion issue coming up in Ethereum right now, so some people started using like another alternative on the blockchain right now, like in a Theta or something. So from that perspective, your service is more like focused on like a multi-platform for the blockchain, and then decrease the friction of for the user side about operational adaptation stuff on switching like in cross-chain transaction.
Yes. So it would be possible, for example, to start out with, let's say, an accounting system where you're using a traditional database to store your portfolio. And later on, if there's a good idea to do that in a more transparent public way, you can just change, I'm going to use that new blockchain on that new platform to do that. So we provide that kind of abstraction. Again, nothing new in IT and computer science. If you build abstraction, microservices, you get to switch out components as you need. But I think this really allows us to achieve a goal of what we call progressive decentralization. We don't need all the blockchain technology to work from day one. We can start with things that we've proven to work, the payment stuff, and then reuse databases, analytics system that we know works today. But as the blockchain, the decentralized alternative, and the individual ecosystem being built and innovated outside the stage from the people working on platforms, we can switch out and bring those into the user without any additional friction that they have seen.
I see. So from the perspective, what do you think, sorry, I have one more question for that. So what do you think about the atomic swap? Because it's kind of hot topic for like, switching the one blockchain to the other blockchain in the token economy. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of talk about two blockchain working together autonomously without you touching it. Like you just set it up. It's like saying that I'm going to post something to this, social media network and have automatically send an email. 90% of the time is what I want, 10% of the time is not what I want. So what's really interesting about it is that we take an approach that the cross-chain interaction really should go through the user, or at least the user agent, under the user control. Now you can automate that agent, you can write your own AI on it, but it's not really something that's autonomous, programmed once and never changed. So we see the adapters into the blockchain as a user representative, a user proxy, versus a, don't worry about it, we'll just trade between this chain until you realize that drain it because we are off by one on some math, right? So we really believe that we need to bring it to the user space, give them the opportunity to act on it through a UI or through an agent and AI that they choose. So that determined that architecture that we see ourselves as a client of the blockchain and not an overlord of the blockchain as some of the atomic swap platform is focused on.
Got it. Very interesting. Thank you so much. All right. So let's move to the second question. So this is kind of my hottest question in my mind right now. So here is now Lightning Network for payment use cases and Plasma Cash for contract use cases. And how do you apply this new technology to your block products? And is there any still technical challenge there? And then what are those challenges? I think probably Ryan, you should go first because your use case is very interesting.
So the way that our system currently works is a player needs to send a transaction on chain when he or she joins a table at the end of each hand and when a player leaves the table. And that requirement at the end of each hand is so that the contract can update. You could think of it as a chip counter, so it knows the player stakes at the given table. And that middle requirement is prohibitively expensive. So we're looking into, right now the Plasma MVP is out and it's still in its early stages, but we're looking at utilizing this type of off-chain settlement so that the only time that an on-chain transaction actually needs to occur is when reconciliation is due. So when a player wants their payout, so when they leave a table or when a tournament is ended. So it's still very early stages. Our team is currently in close contact with the Ethereum Foundation, the guys working on Plasma, and we expect it to take an additional few months before we integrate that into our current solution, but it's 100% needed for us to be economically viable, as current gas costs would be prohibitively expensive for every single hand having to charge 50 cents USD.
Right. It's very convincing. I love this use case. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. So when we ran our pilot last year, we had to weather a few things. We had to weather CryptoKitties. We had to weather a couple of ICOs that really severely dragged on the usability of Ethereum, and from a user experience perspective, that can be really problematic. The charity that was running the appeal, called St. Mungo's, which is a London-based charity, they actually sent the appeal out to normal people, so not crypto geeks. And the way that the donations were made were just by plugging in their credit card details. Now, if you have to wait 5 minutes every time that you make a donation, just a lot of people get puzzled by that. And then actually the computations that we need to do every time there's validation. So what happens is the charity achieves its goals. It helps someone find a home, for example, and every single one of those claims by the charity has to be approved by a validator, which in the case of the pilot was the Greater London Authority, so the local government of London. And what happens there is that the GLA, as they're called, sends a transaction to the smart contract, says, yes, this has been approved, and do the payout to the charity. And that iterates over all the donor accounts and pays out to the charity. So, and just that sheer computation at the height of the network clog was something like $40 or $50 worth of gas, which is obviously really unsustainable. It's like much lower now, but that's the way it is. So we actually adopted a hybrid solution where we synced all of the donations asynchronously. So it wasn't done immediately, it was just done as and when it was possible, which means that it wasn't fully decentralized. It still isn't fully decentralized. We register things on our servers and then sync it to Ethereum. And little by little, we are going to fully back into the network. But so we're, just like you guys, we're looking at a range of different things. We had to redevelop some things to try to take some computation off-chain, and we're actively looking at different solutions. But for the time being, we're maintaining that hybrid structure.
No, got it. Interesting. Thank you.
Cool. So Plasma is really interesting for us because with Plasma chain, we will be able to do some interesting computation and supply chain applications off-chain. And although we are building our own blockchain, we're actually building on top of Quorum, which is essentially a fork of Ethereum, meaning that once Plasma is fully developed, we'll be able to pull the changes and integrate into our blockchain infrastructure. However, I do believe that the payment, the
network?
Yes,
Lightning Network.
Yes, the Lightning Network as well as Plasma, they all belong to the category of off-chain channels, right? I do believe that the scalability issue have to be addressed both on the off-chain channels as well as the on-chain storage as well as processing as well. What if everyone tomorrow, like everyone, there is emergency situation, everyone has to redeem their tokens on mainnet. So we still have to solve the issue of on-chain scalability, and that's why we need sharding.
Okay. Ah, sharding.
Yeah,
Okay.
so you're asking about what are the other challenges that we're foreseeing, right? So one is sharding, the other thing is about interoperability, cross-chain communication, and many people have asked me, so Hope, how are you planning to let all the companies to trust your blockchain and put the data on? First of all, we have privacy layer, but secondly, the answer I'm giving to them is really easy because for all the stuff that you need private data, or you want to handle your own compliance issue, put on your own blockchain or your internal system, but put the information that you need public verification or process on our public blockchain.
Okay.
So that's why we need the cross-chain communication so that our public blockchain can actually connect to all the privately held blockchain, and the companies and all the small businesses can still enjoy the fully distributed trustless system.
So it's kind of a little bit different from the off-chain transaction, but combination from the, I would say like a private atomic swap transaction between public blockchain and private blockchain. That's one of the topics you have to focus on your business.
Yeah, so basically what we can do on the public blockchain is to show the proof that those business
Also,
transactions
more transparent
happen.
way,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So that everyone can verify that. But we understand that there are many companies, because of their compliance
Yeah.
issue and
Doesn't
their
wanna
data
open
privacy
the-
issue, most of the business makes more sense to be handled privately. Yeah. So that's why this is one of the things that we look forward to working with other projects to solve. It's about the cross-chain connectivity. So.
I see. Do you know anyone who is working on that kind of technology right now in the blockchain?
Oh yeah, like quite a few friends of us in the space.
Oh,
Yeah, so including so OneChain did a great presentation yesterday, and so Aeon project, they have their public testnet up already. So yeah.
I see. Right, interesting. Yeah, this is another new pain point in this industry right now.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So because there are so many issues that we discuss in this space, we do believe that I agree with Chris that we should work together and contribute on top of each other's work, so
Very
we
true.
can focus on our public chain while like other projects focusing on their field, and it's all open source, and the entire ecosystem will improve. And I think that's also the beauty of the blockchain ecosystem.
Very true. Thank you so much. That's a great comment.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to add to that as well. The whole blockchain space is incredible so far. If you compare this against the traditional tech guys, for example, right? Every time we have a conversation with somebody, it's an NDA, we will sign your NDA, you sign my NDA, and then we'll only talk about 4 line items, and that's it. We're not going to share anything else. But what's incredible, the blockchain community, and you hear that all the time. We talk about community, we talk about ecosystems, we're sharing a lot, and that's insane because that drives the speed of development and new innovation faster and harder. And it's just incredible. So I mean, let's go back to Plasma again, right? The energy space is a little bit different from some of your applications. A lot of the other applications talking about transactions firing as fast as they can, basically to catch a small window of time for which the transactions to occur. For electricity, it's a little bit different, really, utility billing entity. So what we look at in this space really is this, there's a lot of latency. You're going to have probably the rest of the whole month, for example, if you're billing on a monthly cycle, the whole month where there is little to no transaction until all the bills come in and wham, suddenly across the whole city, I've got probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions of bills going through simultaneously within a very, very small window. So several problems occur. When that loads up a blockchain, for example, right, cost per transaction goes up, it skyrockets, that's one. Then there's going to be a bottleneck. It's going to be crypto kitties all over again every single month, every month, right?
Right.
And that's no fun. Then everybody else suffers. So which is why something like Plasma, for example, makes a lot of sense. We're developing our solution together with Misego. We're likely going to be a layer 3 on top of the layer 2, or under the layer 2 solution. So what's going to happen, what we imagine to be is this. For electricity, like I said earlier on, because of the use of blockchain, because of the use of smart contracts, you're able to crash the cost of transaction on every account. So by doing so, cost is going to be very, very important. So Plasma is going to be very, very key for us. Then what we're looking at also is the ability to have more granular data. So one thing we're looking at now, we're developing is a piece of hardware called the PowerPod. We've mentioned some of that online as well. We've shown some hardware, some of the dashboard images. And what that's looking to do is be able to capture and transmit and lock in a lot of the detail, a lot of the data from generation itself. So part of the story really is that we're able to show provenance, the source of this energy itself, and that's very, very key. Because like in the Japan context, for example, right here, what happens a lot with the big power companies, they aggregate the power that they're buying from a lot of solar facilities. A lot of investors who have solar facilities sell the power wholesale to some of these big generation companies. And the interesting thing is this, that there aren't very many models done where they're actually separating the energy and selling that as a premium. What they're doing is they're blending the cost of that into conventional power itself. So what you end up buying over here in this market, for example, is a blended cost of power, which need not necessarily be the case. You either can get it cheaper because there's a cheaper source of power, or someone is willing to pay a premium. For example, American or European MNCs looking for sustainable energy sources, they would pay a premium for it, and there are models for this, right? And that premium goes to promoting renewable and sustainable energy sources. So that's important. So the provenance of energy is important as well. So all these transactions get locked in. So that is part of the architecture.
I see. Let me ask you additional questions now. So you mentioned also for solar business market in Japan right now, and then to me, in my understanding, when you're going to apply like a second layer of transactional system, like a Lightning Network to the solar, marketplace or something, we can apply more like, geographically P2P transaction in off-chain model, right? So which is also like more to me like, there are economic viability there. Why we can need to apply like, blockchain technology to the solar energy supply chain system. Is that correct?
So things can be done off-chain. It can be done through a centralized system, of course, right? But the idea really is that, think of it very, very simply this. If a company A built a network, built a system, it only grows so far. It only has so much penetration into market and so much uptake. If you built it as a public network that anyone else can plug in, that benefits everybody else.
Right.
And further to that really is that if it's a public network, the core infrastructure itself, underlying layer of technology, that is built once and used many. Like in the energy retail industry right now, everything is centralized. Every single retailer has to have their own CRM systems, their billing systems, invoicing systems, the tracking systems. Like in Singapore, a system called the EBT, the architecture, which connects a retailer to the central intermediary. So over here in this market, there's the same system as well. That allows a retailer to pull the live consumption data off the big power companies or the grid itself. All these systems being centralized means that every single company replicates this cost over and over and over again. In Singapore, there are 31 retailers right now. In Japan, there are over 400. So you can imagine that cost being multiplied 400 times. What's that cost? In the Singapore context, for example, we're looking at cheap end. Low end, you get a very economical, low price dev to build it. You're looking at about $200,000 to $300,000 easily. At the high end, you pay someone like Oracle to build it. That's running into like 3 million. So multiply that across every single retailer, and that's insane. So that's the problem with the centralized system. It's incredibly expensive, hard to maintain, and not everybody buys into the same system. Then you have interoperability problems, right? My data doesn't sync up with yours. We have different metrics for measuring, and then what happens?
Interesting. Thank you. Yeah, that's very convincing use case. There are a lot of business opportunities there. Great. Yeah, you want to do Chris?
So I think one really interesting thing when I hear the different use case of kind of additional scalability is level 2s are typically sharding and like more chains. But one of the things that people forget is that blockchains are a type of online transaction processing type of database, OLTP type of database. And what about analytics? What about crunching numbers? And we automatically assume that analytics will be a centralized system, or most of them are currently one. But what's really interesting, if you just kind of zoom out again, look in a more future view, and look at what is the most innovative, the last 10 years, what drove the most innovation in analytics? And it's GPUs. Right? GPUs in machine learning and aggregation and accelerated database that runs in memory. The question is, who has the most deployed GPU in the field? Crypto. So that's once you look at it, it's almost like there's a natural resource where we're using 100% of the deployed capacity of GPU for essentially not computation, right? We're using it in support of the trustless computation that runs on the Celeron next to your mining rig, right? That's essentially how small the processing power is. So one way to kind of continue moving towards what's coming next in level 2, layer 2, beyond plasmas and cross-chain interoperability, is to see if we can take those GPUs that's in place and actually do some of the number crunching that's necessary to crunch down energy data, to figure out supply chain raw details, to look at kind of spiky web traffic from donation, and reduce it on those chips before we bring it to the chain. That's just one of the many techniques of bringing data analytics, and obviously if you bring in GPU-based data analytics, you bring in GPU-based governance. AI governance onto this network. So instead of just saying, I will slash your stake because your transaction volume is greater than 3 or less than 3, we can start looking for patterns on top of this data. And these are all the things that are possible once we unbound ourselves to the particular design choices made on the VM and on the kind of opcode, and go a little bit finding the parallel within the centralized cloud computing world and say, can the blockchain provide a new raw resources, taking a portion of the GPU capacity deployed and making better use of it? And I know NVIDIA is very interested in things like this. And that's, I think, some of the new area research that I think as a community we can work on together.
I see. Interesting. I think I'd like to ask an additional question for that. So, if we're going to take those kind of blockchain economy, all the time we have to think about the privacy issues. So we have to see the balance between data transparency, but also an anonymity and anonymousness of the transaction. So how you see those feature or that most of dApps player have to take care of it.
Yeah, so right now dApps are typically built on one or a maximum two chains, right? We have a lot of similar model where you use ERC20 and Ethereum blockchain for your primary staking kind of model, and then you have a faster chain to do metering. That's pretty much the norm here. But I do believe that some of the chains that's currently working on privacy technology deeply embedded within it can be used for certain use cases, such as customer data don't go to these more, more traditional chain, but go to this third chain or fourth chain. And that's why it's so important for us to build this cohesive experience where even though we tapping into various pool of researchers on level 1, layer 1, and then building new solution for scalability in layer 2 and maybe 3, as you mentioned, that we should really pick out the best of breed of different blockchain database technology. I don't know if any of the audience is IT architects or solution architect. You analyze all the cloud service providers' features and databases and networks and storage and determine what is the right mix for your particular application. And I see that happening in the blockchain or decentralized world, where an architect, the team members who work with you will say, oh, I want to use this privacy-oriented smart contract platform, when one exists, that's deployed in mainnet, for that type of customer data, and we'll roll up, and then we'll use some sort of cross-chain to roll up the sum, which would have taken away all the personal identifiable data and settle out on, let's say, an Ethereum blockchain so that people will get paid, and that could even be delay settled in the way you mentioned, right? So that's a type of orchestration and design that will become much and much more part of that blockchain design, the same way it's part of cloud design and system architecture design. And I think it would be healthy to be able to have people on top, working on solution, looking at all the innovation. Meanwhile, you have deep research happening in each of the pockets of the area to make those things possible.
Right. Does anyone want to add, these privacy or, anonymity stuff? Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, so privacy is really important. So what I was saying about transparency is obviously really important because we want all the impact data about the charities available to everybody, so you can check whether they're actually doing something good and improving people's lives. But when it comes to the private data of the beneficiaries, you want to obviously keep that hidden. But at the same time, you want to give these people a voice. So let's take a really naive example where there's a charity that says that it's building a well somewhere for a local community. It's validated by a validator, but actually that validator is corrupt. You want to be able to allow the people from the community to be whistleblowers there, but without exposing all of their personal data on the public blockchain. And it's a hard problem to solve. It involves self-sovereign identity, all kinds of things. There's a bit of fragmentation in this space, which is hard to solve as well. And we're at the moment we want to grant from the UK government, Innovate UK, to work with Imperial College London's cryptocurrency research group to look at different ways that we can encrypt that data, encrypt the proof around. So if you're helping a child find an adoptive family, you also want to keep those proofs secure, available only to validators and authorized parties, and ideally you want to do it in a decentralized storage. So I think there are lots of different ways that can be done, but certainly all the compatibility issues, the cross-chain issues, and all of this are really hard problems. And just to echo what Hope was saying, it really is an amazing space for that kind of open source stuff. So everything that we do obviously is also open source, and we're building on the findings of lots of other teams as well.
Great, fantastic, thanks so much. Okay, so move to the next question. This is actually from panelists. So everyone, do you guys also did ICO, right? All of you guys. Oh, you done it on ICO yet? Okay. What's wrong?
The ICO is planned for. There will be an ICO, but at a much later date.
Okay, got it. So this is a question about the token economy. So the ICO and adapt is correct, also getting a very hot topic right now. And then, but here's like an issue about also the definition of the token is also important, like a security token or payment token or utility token, but also like speculative trading on the token economy is one of the biggest problems on the blockchain right now. So how do you see about those issues? Like scapegoat investment token, or like a more UTT payment, or token economy for real life.
Yeah,
Right.
sure. So our token sales cup coming in about 20 days, and what we're doing to address that issue head on is we aren't doing any type of pre-sale discount bonus, and our tokens aren't transferable until our mainnet launch, and we felt that these factors enable us to grow a community of interested people who want to help see the Virtue Poker platform grow versus the people who come in to, with other people in pool to get a discount to then flip the tokens on an exchange 1 week later. And I think this is where the industry is going to move. I think the speculative element of token sales in the past has created a sore in the industry and has triggered the regulatory response that we've seen worldwide.
Right.
Maybe just to add to that, I think it's a really important issue for us as well. But the reason why we're not doing an ICO straight away is for exactly that reason. So we're in the middle of an equity fundraising round at the moment, and some of the investors that are coming in are impact investors who will also be clients of Alice further down the line, because it's donations, but it's also impact investments. And if you're a traditional impact investor, so impact investors are just traditional investors who have a double bottom line. They want a financial return, but they also want a social return. And our platform solves a whole host of problems for them. But they understand equity. They don't understand tokens. They don't even know how to get that onto their balance sheets, right? So doing an equity round is basically a way to educate them on that, get them used to the platform, get them using the platform as well. So we'll issue the tokens before we do the ICO as well. And then little by little, hopefully, we can get them on board without having just a bunch of speculators who want to flip our tokens as soon as they come out.
I see. That's an interesting approach. Great.
So we didn't do ICO either. So we raised a private round from strategic contributors as well as future customers. So basically, we check each one's background and talk to them to make sure that they either A, can bring supply chain connections on our platform, or B, their company themselves, they're just going to use the product. So this is what people have been using the buzzword utility token. Is like you want to play a Candy Crush game, right, on the App Store, and then you buy the, I don't know, is that a Candy Crush coin or the Candy Crush points? I forgot what it is, right? Because it's almost like you go to a salon and you buy a membership, you pay up front because you're supposed to use that in the future. So for us, it was really important that the tokens distributed to the people who own business or have connection to those business who are going to use the functionality.
Right.
It's going to be paying those tokens as, a service fee on our platform. Yeah.
This is actually a very good point, because all the time when I'm thinking about the token economy, it's like an ideal token economy should be designed like in a circulation of the stakeholder, or circulation or supply chain economy of the stakeholder. So you just working on those kind of approach to issue a token and get the money from them. That's very interesting.
Yeah. So I was trying to, when I try to explain people the utility token, normally I start with the Candy Crush coin or like salon membership. Like, yeah, that's like normally how people get to understand the difference between those and like the actual investment, the actual investment stuff. Because you don't expect a return, right? You don't expect a return when you buy the Candy Crush point that you're going to be using to play the game. Yeah.
Totally true. Because actually he's not here, but Richard Moore, the CEO of the Quantstamp, all the time we're gonna discuss each other about that topic too. So it should be like this is should be a hot topic token economy. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. You wanna do?
So we ran an ICO. Almost embarrassed to say it right now. So we ran an ICO. We closed it in the 23rd of Feb. And what we did was very similar to that. What we did, we ran the ICO. There were no bonuses paid out at any level. I want to be fair to the community. It was a community building event. We did have a private sale kind of around, but we capped that to only just 2/3 of all the tokens that we released. There were no bounties paid out either. So everybody came in on even playing field and got the same rates. And that we wanted to put a lot more tokens in circulation and so on. We also put in vesting periods for some of the bigger consumption because we didn't want people to go in and do the typical pump and dump. And it was a hard decision to make at the time. Because at the time when we started and we said we won't pay out bounties and everything else, we actually turned some people off. Some people came up and there was some name calling as well. But we made the call to do it. At the time it was a marketing thing. Everybody else was giving a lot of bounties and so on. It was kind of crazy.
Right.
But we're quite glad we did it because, again, it's all interconnected, unfortunately. In fact, we had a very, very long conversation yesterday about the token economy and everything else and what it ties into. It's not just about the speculative component of it. Because you got to realize a lot of the entities raising funds, some of the companies are mature and running an ICO, but by and large, most of them are brand new. They're new entities, young companies, like ours is about a year old. We had an existing business model and so on. But what's really important for all these companies really is to get first dollar in.
Right.
Prove your concept, get it out there, build a business, get revenue in. After that, then we can talk about looking at the appreciation of that token itself. Because then the token is part of the economy. We've got business in that's using that token.
Right.
There's a velocity of money, essentially. That's what we're talking about, right?
That's
Keynesian
right.
economics, right?
Yeah.
So that's the movement of the token within the system itself.
Right.
There's the demand and the consumption.
Right.
That's the natural use of the token,
Totally true.
not the speculative component. So that natural use takes tokens out of the circulation within the ecosystem itself, and it circulates it within. So
Right.
that's what's more important, far, far more important.
I agree with you. And also that kind of things also build the ownership for the token holder.
Exactly,
For the ecosystem.
exactly.
Right. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I think when we look at like fast forward 3 or 4 years, there will be utility in the utility token. A lot of the project would have shipped. Some of the ones that are on stage would have shipped at the time of the release of the token, and they will interoperate. But one of the most important thing is that eventually, the money cash flow that's going into traditional economies, traditional billing system, and for example, in our field, into traditional software as a service subscription, will start going into token-based ecosystem. And when you start seeing that substitution of cash flow funneling away from traditional billing and metering and traditional donation into token economy, then there is no doubt that utility token wasn't a scam. It's just that we need to accelerate that and reduce the gap between the promise and the delivery. Now, obviously, we abide by a similar principle. We're in the middle of pre-sale. We've done a public pre-sale, and we are going to wait until we could say you can redeem software and services with the Cardstack token as you would with a web hosting company on the day the token is unlocked. That's utility value. That's substitute utility value. It's a utility that you would have paid your registrar or Google or hosting company that you're now paying the token economy that's now not controlled by a single company's terms of service, that's now governed by a community-driven smart contract. That, I believe, is the turning point where people see the utility as not just, oh, what utility do you make up in the lawyer's office, but more like, oh my God, this is actually not possible before. This type of organization of people and interest and alignment, not only within one project, but across the project, that's when I think we can really say confidently the blockchain has arrived.
Great. Thank you so much. It's just a final session. Maybe just we can open one question to the audience. It's sorry, it's running out of time right now. So just one question. Does anyone? Is that okay? Are you through now? Great. Someone?
Sorry. Hello.
Okay.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Tig. I work for Zcoin, and I'm building a zero coin into Ethereum, which is a privacy solution. I are discussing privacy solutions there. I just have a question for the Virtue Poker team. I have the problem at the moment of actually trying to build randomness into the contract. It's a big problem, and I know that you discussed that you have a type of off-chain solution that does card shuffling. I was just kind of wondering if you could go into a bit more detail about how that works. I think it's well known that generating randomness on chain is a incredibly difficult problem. And I was wondering maybe you could just describe what your process is for doing that.
Sure. Yeah. So the way that we derive randomness is completely off-chain. The app is actually a state engine, so all players seated at a table are running the same code at the same time, and we use it's called a mental poker protocol to cooperatively encrypt and shuffle the deck of cards. So the process is every single player actually shuffles the deck for each hand played on the platform. We use the random number algorithm urandom, so essentially the noise from the user's machine. And this process is repeated for n players who are seated at a particular table. So all the players perform a peer-to-peer subnet, and this process goes on for every single hand played on the platform. So we actually we didn't try to tackle the on-chain RNG. I know a couple of other online gaming companies in the space have gone that approach, but that's partially why we went in our direction.
Thank you. Great. So this is all about our session. So thank you very much, guys.